You think you know why we're here, why humans survived when every other human species, Neanderthals, Denisovans erectus, all
What
of them,
secrets do you
disappeared
hold?
into the dust of deep time.
Rest now
You
and
probably
reveal
think it
them
was
in time.
intelligence, or tools, or some special mutation that made us different, made us better. But you'd be wrong. The answer isn't strength. It isn't brains. It's something else entirely. Something that's alive in your blood right
This
now at this
skull, a
very
remnant of
moment
the
as
past,
you listen
reminds
to
us of
these
our
words.
fleeting
This
time.
isn't just a
What stories
story
could it
about
tell of lives
fossils in
long gone?
museums or bones in caves. This is a story about you, about what your ancestors did 40,000 years ago that still affects how you live, how you love, how you face change today. My name is Elias Thornwood. My friends call me Eli. I'm 67 years old. I spent 40 years teaching anthropology at the University of Arizona before I retired. And I've spent the last 5 years of my life trying to answer one question. A question that started as academic curiosity and became something much more personal. If this video plays while you fall asleep, that's fine. Good stories are meant to accompany you into dreams. You can subscribe if you want. Leave a comment telling me where you're watching from, what time it is. I'd like that. But mostly I just want you to understand something. Something important. Something that might change how you see yourself. The question is this: why did Neanderthals disappear when they were stronger than us, had bigger brains than us, and survived for twice as long as modern humans have even existed? That's loop number one. Keep that question in your mind. We'll come back to it. Let me show you what I mean. I'm standing in a cave right now. Well, not literally right now as you hear this, but I was there this morning. Chaco Canyon, New Mexico, about 30 miles from where I live. The sun was setting. That particular kind of desert sunset that turns the sandstone walls orange and gold and makes you feel like you're standing inside a fire that doesn't burn. The kind of light that makes you understand why ancient people thought this place was sacred. In my hand, I was holding a skull. Not a replica, not a cat bones, the actual skull of a Neanderthal man who died 39,000 years ago. The Museum of Natural History loans it to me sometimes. Professional courtesy. 40 years of teaching earns you certain privileges. I stood there in that golden light, turning the skull in my hands. Heavy, thick bone. You can feel the density of it. The museum label says he was approximately 42 years old when he died. My wife Margaret died in 2018. She was 72. She'd been diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's 7 years before that. Started in her early 60s. Too young, way too young. After she died, I had her DNA tested. Academic curiosity, I told myself. Professional interest. The results came back 3.8% Neanderthal DNA, higher than average. The typical person of European descent carries 1 to 4%. Margaret was at the high end of that range. So I started wondering, started researching, started asking questions that maybe I should have asked 20 years earlier when there might have been time to do something. Is there a connection between that ancient DNA and the disease that took her mind before it took her body? Does carrying more Neanderthal genes make you more vulnerable or more resistant? The answer, as it turns out, is complicated. And that's loop number two. What does that 1 to 4% DNA give you, and what does it take away? Hold that question. We're building something here. But that question led me to a bigger one. The question that's kept me awake for 5 years now. If Neanderthals were so strong, so smart, so perfectly adapted to survive, and they were, I'm going to show you just how incredible they were, then why aren't they still here? Why did they vanish while we thrived? And what does that answer tell us about ourselves? About how we survive, about what it takes to endure when the world changes around you. I held that skull in the fading light and I thought, this man was stronger than me, tougher than me. He could bench press 500 pounds without training. His brain was 10% larger than mine. He lived through ice ages that would have killed me in a week. And yet he's gone. His entire species is gone. While I, softer and weaker and smaller brained, stand here holding his skull 39,000 years later. Why, that's the question we're going to answer tonight. And I promise you the answer will surprise you. Let me take you back to 2019, a Tuesday afternoon in October. I remember because the trees outside my office window at the University of Arizona were just starting to turn. That brief moment in Tucson when the weather becomes perfect and you remember why you live in the desert. I was teaching my last seminar of the semester. Human Evolution and Extinction. 15 graduate students sitting around a conference table, most of them half asleep after lunch. One of them, a sharp kid named Marcus, who was always asking the difficult questions, raised his hand. "Dr. Thornwood," he said, "were Neanderthals stupid?" The other students perked up. This was the kind of question that usually led to interesting tangents. I set down my coffee, looked at him for a long moment. Define stupid, I said. Marcus shrugged. I don't know, primitive, less intelligent than us. Their brains were bigger than yours, I told him. On average, a Neanderthal brain was about 1,500 cubic centimeters. Yours is probably around 1,350. That's a 10% difference, 150 cubic centimeters. That's significant. I stood up, walked to the whiteboard, started drawing. Now, does bigger automatically mean smarter? No. Whales have massive brains. Elephants too. Brain size matters less than brain structure, neural density, the way regions are organized and connected. I drew a Neanderthal skull next to a modern human skull. The differences are subtle but real. But here's what we know for certain. Neanderthals had the hardware, language centers, there, planning centers, there, memory centers, there, all present, all developed, maybe even more developed than ours in some ways. Marcus leaned forward. Then why did they go extinct and we didn't? Now that, I said, is the right question. I looked around the table. What if I told you the answer isn't intelligence? What if the difference between extinction and survival had nothing to do with being smart or stupid? Nobody answered. They were all listening now. What if, I continued, the question isn't who was smarter, but who was better at connecting? Who was better at adapting? Who was better at letting go of who they were in order to become who they needed to be? I remember that moment clearly because it was the last time I taught that class. I went home that evening to our house in the foothills. Margaret was sitting in the living room looking out the window at the mountains. The late afternoon light made her silver hair glow. Hey, Maggie, I said, how was your day? She turned to look at me. There was a moment, just a brief flicker, where I could see her struggling, trying to place my face, trying to remember. Then it passed. She smiled. It was good, she said. Did you just get home from work? I'd been retired for 6 months. That was the night I decided I couldn't keep pretending things were okay. Couldn't keep showing up to teach while my wife was slowly disappearing. I submitted my retirement papers the next week. We moved to New Mexico in January. Smaller house, closer to Chaco Canyon, where some of the most important archaeological sites in North America are located, where I could think. Research, try to understand. Margaret died in March of 2018, and I've been trying to answer that student's question ever since. Were Neanderthals stupid? No, but they did lack something we had, and that something made all the difference. Let me tell you who the Neanderthals actually were. Not the cartoon version, not the grunting caveman you see in comedy sketches. The real thing. I want you to close your eyes for a moment. Actually close them. I'll wait. Now picture this. You're standing on a cliff overlooking the Mediterranean Sea. 39,500 years ago. The Rock of Gibraltar behind you, massive and eternal. The wind coming off the water is cold. Colder than you'd expect because we're in the middle of an ice age. The world is different, stranger, more raw. You see a group of people below you on the beach. 10, maybe 12 of them. From a distance, they look almost like us. They walk upright. They wear clothes, animal hides stitched together, practical rather than decorative. They carry tools, but as you get closer, the differences become apparent. They're short, 5'5" on average, but massively built, barrel-chested, arms like tree trunks. If you stood next to one, you'd understand immediately that this was a different kind of human. Built for power, built for endurance. Their faces are different too, lower, longer skulls, massive brow ridges over their eyes, big noses, huge noses projecting forward designed to warm freezing air before it hits the lungs. No chin like we have, just a sloping jaw that connects to a neck thick as a fire hydrant. But if you looked into their eyes, you'd see something you recognized. Intelligence, awareness, someone looking back. These weren't animals, they were people. Just a different kind of people. An older man stands at the front. Let's call him Vorak. 42 years old. That's old for his people. Very old. His hair is graying at the temples. His body bears the scars of 100 hunts. A healed break in his left arm. Teeth worn down from chewing hides to soften them. But his eyes are sharp, watchful. He's teaching a young woman, his daughter Tala, 16 years old, how to read the sea. How to know when the seals will come. When the fish will run. When it's safe to venture onto the rocks. This is their land. Their people have lived here for generations beyond counting, longer than memory, longer than stories. Vorak doesn't know that his people have lived here for 200,000 years. He has no concept of that kind of time. But he knows the ancient ones came before. He knows that traditions go back to the beginning of the world. And he's teaching Tala because someday she'll need to teach her own children. That's how knowledge survives, parent to child, elder to youth, an unbroken chain. Let me tell you what they could do. First, strength. When archaeologists find Neanderthal skeletons, the bones are thick, way thicker than ours, dense like ivory. When you hold one, it feels wrong in your hand. It's too heavy, like it's made of different material. And the muscle attachment points, the places where tendons connected muscle to bone, show stress marks. Deep ridges where massive muscles pulled and pulled and pulled for decades. One researcher tried to calculate their strength based on bone thickness and muscle attachment patterns. His estimate, a Neanderthal could probably bench press 500 pounds without training, just naturally. Think about that for a second. 500 pounds, that's world-class powerlifter territory. And for them, it was just normal. Vorik once killed a cave bear with a thrusting spear, got close enough to look into its eyes before he drove the stone point into its chest. The bear's claws raked his shoulder, tore muscle, left scars he still carries. But he killed it. Fed his band for a week. Try doing that. Their hands were huge, thick fingers, massive thumbs, but incredibly precise. We know this because of the tools they made. Stone tools that required fine motor control. Delicate flaking, careful pressure. You can't make those tools with clumsy hands. They had the strength of a gorilla and the dexterity of a surgeon. Both at once. Second, the brain. I mentioned this earlier, but it bears repeating because it destroys the myth of the stupid caveman. 1,500 cubic centimeters on average. That's bigger than Einstein's brain. Bigger than yours. Bigger than mine. Now I need to be honest here, and I'll be honest throughout this whole story, which is loop number 3. What was missing from Neanderthals if they had everything? Hold that question. We don't fully understand what brain size means. It's not everything. It's about organization, neural density, the efficiency of connections. But we know they had the structures necessary for complex thought. The archaeological evidence proves it. They made fire. Not just used fire they found, made it from scratch. That's huge. Making fire requires planning, understanding of materials, knowledge of technique. It's not intuitive. It's learned. It's taught. Vorik knows 7 ways to make fire. Striking flint against iron pyrite, spinning a stick in dry grass, using a bow drill when his hands are too cold to spin. He teaches Tala all of them because the day will come when she needs fire and has no other source. They made tools in the Mousterian tradition. That's the technical name. What it means is they could look at a rock and visualize the tool inside it, then chip away everything that wasn't the tool, flake by flake, following a pattern they held in their minds. That's abstract thinking. You have to see something that doesn't exist yet. Hold it in your imagination. Then make the real world match your imagination. That's not simple. They made different tools for different jobs. Scrapers for hides, points for spears, knives for cutting. Each one designed for its purpose. Each one made with care. And they took care of each other. This is the part that gets me, the part that makes them undeniably human in the way that matters most. There's a skeleton from a cave in Iraq, Shinadar 1 they call it, a Neanderthal man who lived to about 40 years old, which doesn't sound impressive until you learn about his injuries. His right arm was withered, probably from birth, completely useless. His right eye was damaged, possibly blind. He had injuries all over his body, healed fractures, worn joints, arthritis in his spine. This man was falling apart, and yet he lived to 40, in the Ice Age with one arm. How someone fed him, someone protected him. Someone kept him alive for decades, even though he couldn't hunt, couldn't fight, couldn't do the things Neanderthals needed to do to survive. That's not instinct. That's compassion. That's love. Vorik's band has an elder like this, a man called Kael, nearly 50 years old. His hip was broken in a mammoth hunt 20 years ago. It healed wrong. He walks with a limp, can't run, can barely keep up when the band moves to new hunting grounds. But Kael knows things. He knows which plants heal wounds, which mushrooms are safe to eat. He knows the stories of the ancestors. He knows where the herds will be when the seasons change. So the band carries him when they travel, brings him meat when the hunt is successful, keeps him warm in winter. Because knowledge matters, and Kael has knowledge that would die with him. They buried their dead. We're fairly certain about this, though there's debate. Several Neanderthal skeletons have been found in what appear to be deliberate graves. Bodies positioned carefully, sometimes with objects nearby, maybe grave goods, maybe not. But even if they didn't bury their dead with ceremony, they at least moved the bodies, put them somewhere. That shows awareness. That shows they understood death as something different from sleep, something final, something that mattered. They used pigments, red ochre, manganese dioxide, ground into powder. We find it at their sites, on their tools, sometimes on shells with holes drilled through them like beads, like jewelry. What were they doing with this? We don't know for certain. Maybe body painting, maybe decorating hides, maybe marking territory, maybe something symbolic we can't even imagine. But they were doing something beyond pure survival, something that suggests an inner life, a sense of self, a sense of meaning. Tala wears 3 shells around her neck. Each one has a hole carefully drilled through it, each one painted with red ochre. Her mother made them, gave them to Tala on the day she became a woman. They mean you are loved, you are valued, you belong to us. And they survived. God did they survive. 200,000 years in Ice Age Europe. Let that number sink in for a moment. 200,000 years. Modern humans have only been doing civilization for about 10,000 years. Writing cities, agriculture. All of that is less than 10,000 years old. Neanderthals survived in Ice Age Europe for 20 times longer than we've had cities. They survived glaciers advancing and retreating. They survived temperature swings that would empty Europe of almost all life. They survived megafauna that could kill you in seconds. Cave bears, cave lions, woolly rhinos, giant hyenas. And they didn't just survive, they thrived. They spread from Spain to Siberia. They adapted to forests and grasslands and mountains and coasts. They figured out how to live in places that would kill an unprepared human in one night. They hunted big game. We know this from isotope analysis of their bones. Neanderthals ate meat, lots of it, mostly from large animals. Reindeer, bison, horses, sometimes mammoth. Hunting mammoth with stone-tipped spears. Think about that image for a moment. A mammoth weighs 6 tons, has tusks that can gore you, skin thick as leather armor. And you're going after it with a wooden stick and a rock. That takes courage, coordination, planning, communication. You can't hunt mammoth alone. You need a group. You need strategy. You need everyone doing their part. So they could communicate, had to. Whether it was full language like ours, we don't know yet. We'll talk about that later. But they could share information, make plans, coordinate actions. That requires some form of language. Vorak uses different whistles to signal during hunts. 3 short bursts mean the herd is moving your direction. A long descending note means danger retreat. A rising trill means successful kill come help. His people have maybe 200 signals like this. Not words exactly, but communication, shared meaning. It works. They survive. But is it enough? That's a question we'll explore. They probably sang. There's a flute made from a cave bear bone found in Slovenia, about 40,000 years old. Right in Neanderthal territory. Right in Neanderthal time. It has holes deliberately made positioned for fingers. Maybe they made it. Maybe early modern humans made it. We don't know for sure. But someone was making music, and Neanderthals were there. Music requires abstract thinking, rhythm, pattern, memory, emotional expression, all the things that make us human. Vorak has heard singing, not from his people. They make rhythmic chants during hunts, low repetitive sounds that keep everyone synchronized. But he's heard something different. From the south, from the strangers. We'll get to that. They lived in small groups, maybe 10 to 30 individuals, extended families. They stayed together, moved together, hunted together, raised children together. We know they had childhood, long childhood, like us. Neanderthal kids didn't mature fast. They took years to grow up. Their brains developed slowly. That means they needed care, protection, teaching. That means they had culture to pass down, knowledge that took time to learn, skills that required practice. Stories maybe, traditions, ways of doing things that got handed from one generation to the next. So here's what we know for sure. Neanderthals were strong, smart, skilled, compassionate, cultural. They had everything they needed to survive, everything they needed to thrive. They had language of some kind, tools, fire art, maybe music, possibly burial practices, care for the sick. Everything that supposedly makes us special. And they've been doing it successfully for 200,000 years, in one of the harshest environments on Earth. So why aren't they here? Why did they disappear? Why did we survive when they had every advantage? Loop number 1, remember. Hold that question. Because when you really look at what Neanderthals were, when you see past the stereotype to the reality, you realize something unsettling. They weren't that different from us. They weren't primitive. They weren't stupid. They weren't brutish. They were human, just a different kind of human. A human built for a different world. A human who'd figured out how to survive that world for longer than we've existed. And then we showed up, and everything changed. There's something perfect about falling asleep to stories about human history. These aren't just abstract tales about people who lived and died before civilization began. These are your stories, your ancestors, your deep past, the people who survived so you could be here listening, breathing, drifting into sleep, or staying alert in the darkness of your room. So let it happen if it wants to. Let the words wash over you. You don't need to remember every detail. You don't need to stay awake. That's not the point. The point is the drift, the slow fade, the gentle pull of sleep mixing with the pull of deep time. Let it take you where it wants to go. One morning, Vorak saw the boats. He'd risen before dawn to check the seal rocks. The seals come to give birth in spring, and spring was approaching. His band needed to know when the seals would arrive. Seal meat, seal fat, seal hides, survival. He stood on the cliff and looked south across the water, and that's when he saw them. 3 boats, unlike anything his people made. Longer, sleeker, with strange shapes that caught the wind, and people in them. He couldn't see them clearly from this distance, but he could see enough. They were people, not seals, not fish. People, coming from the south, from across the water. This had never happened before. Tala climbed up beside him. She'd followed him as she often did, trying to learn, trying to understand. Ba, she said, the word for father in their tongue. What is that? Vorak didn't answer for a long moment. He watched the boats move across the water. Watched them beach on the Watu Valley south of here. Watched people climb out. Tall people. Lean people. Different people. I don't know, he said finally, but we need to watch them. Are they dangerous? Tala asked. I don't know, Vorak said again. Everything unknown is dangerous until you know it. This is wisdom. This is how his people have survived for so long. Be cautious. Be watchful. Don't trust the unknown. But here's the thing. Unknown can also mean opportunity. Unknown can mean new knowledge, new tools, new ways of doing things. Vorak doesn't know this yet, but he'll learn. Over the next few weeks, Vorak watches the strangers. They make camp 2 valleys south. They fish. They gather shellfish. They hunt small game. They don't approach Vorak's band, and Vorak doesn't approach them. But he watches, and what he sees is strange. They're not as strong as his people. He can tell from how they move. Lighter, faster, more graceful maybe, but not as powerful. They use different tools. Lighter spears, thrown not thrust. They kill from a distance. This seems cowardly wrong, but also effective. They kill without getting hurt. Vorak has scars from every large animal he's ever hunted. That's the price of strength. If you get close, you get hurt. These people don't have as many scars. Maybe they're smarter, or maybe they're weaker. Vorak can't decide which. And then one day Tala disappears. She goes gathering and doesn't come back by sunset. Vorak and 3 others go searching. They find her 2 valleys south, sitting with the strangers, around their fire, eating their food. Vorak's first instinct is rage, protectiveness. These are strangers. They could be dangerous. They could hurt his daughter. But when he comes closer, he sees something unexpected. Tala is laughing. A woman, one of the strangers with dark skin and small features and strange clothing, is showing Tala something. A bone, carved into a needle, with a hole through it. She's demonstrating how to use it, pushing it through hide, pulling sinew through the hole, sewing. Vorak's people don't sew. They wrap hides around themselves, tie them with leather cords. It works, keeps them warm enough. But this is different. This makes the hides fit closer, tighter, warmer. Tala looks up, sees her father. Her eyes are bright with excitement. Bah, she says. Look, they can make the hides join together, like skin grows. Look. The stranger woman looks at Vorak. She doesn't speak his language. He doesn't speak hers. But she holds out the needle, offers it. A gift, a trade, a peace offering. Vorak doesn't take it immediately. He's wary, suspicious. But Tala is safe. The woman is smiling. And the needle, the needle is clever. Finally, he nods, takes the needle, examines it. The woman speaks, words he doesn't understand. But her tone is friendly, welcoming. She gestures to the fire, to the food cooking there. Fish, shellfish, an invitation. Vorak looks at his daughter, at the strangers, at the needle in his hand, and makes a decision. He sits. This is loop number 4. Why did Neanderthals and modern humans interbreed, but then stop? Remember this moment, this meeting, this choice. We'll come back to it. Around 45,000 years ago, give or take a few centuries, we can't be exact, something happened in Europe. Actually, that's not quite right. Let me be more precise. Around 45,000 years ago, we know something happened because of what we find in the ground, in caves, in the layers of sediment that mark the passage of millennia. A new type of human appeared in significant numbers, different from Neanderthals, taller, more slender, lighter bones, smaller faces, higher foreheads, chins that stuck out instead of sloping back. If you saw one walking down a street today in Santa Fe or Phoenix or anywhere else, you wouldn't look twice. They look like us because they were us. Early modern humans, Homo sapiens, our direct ancestors. They came from Africa originally, though that migration happened much earlier. But around 45,000 years ago, they started moving into Europe in significant numbers, into Neanderthal territory. The two species had met before, in the Middle East maybe 100,000 years ago. They'd even interbred. We know this because of DNA. In 2010, scientists sequenced the Neanderthal genome. They took DNA from bones tens of thousands of years old, pieced it together, compared it to modern human DNA, and found something unexpected. Everyone outside Africa carries Neanderthal DNA, not much. 1 to 4% of your genome, if your ancestors came from Europe or Asia or the Americas, comes from Neanderthals. My wife Margaret, as I mentioned, was at 3.8%, higher than average. I'm at 2.1%, more typical, but it's there. In almost everyone who isn't of purely African descent. The DNA is real. The mixing happened. Modern humans and Neanderthals didn't just meet, they mated. They had children together. Those children survived, had children of their own, passed the DNA down through 1,500 generations to you. Think about what that means for a second. These weren't different species in the way we usually think of species. They could have children together, fertile children, children who fit into human society, children who survived and thrived. The genetic evidence tells us when it happened. The interbreeding occurred between 50 and 60,000 years ago, probably in the Middle East. Probably in multiple encounters over thousands of years, not a single event, a long, slow mixing. But here's what's strange. The DNA only goes one way. Neanderthals contributed to us, but we didn't contribute much to them. The Neanderthal genome shows very little modern human DNA, maybe none. The mixing was mostly one-directional. Modern human men with Neanderthal women, perhaps. Or the children stayed with modern human groups, or something else we don't understand. The genetics tell us they met. They mixed, but they didn't merge. They remained separate. Two populations, two cultures, two ways of being human. So what did that meeting look like beyond Vorak and the stranger woman? What happened across Europe as these two peoples encountered each other? Nobody knows for certain. We can only imagine based on what we find. But we can make educated guesses based on what we know about both groups. I think they recognized each other as human. Different, yes, but human. Neanderthals were shorter, stockier, stronger. Faces that projected forward, big noses, heavy brow ridges. But they walked upright, used tools, controlled fire, wore clothes. They were clearly people. Modern humans were taller, more slender, lighter build, smaller faces, higher foreheads, prominent chins, different, but not alien, not animals, people. I think they tried to communicate. Gestures, sounds, showing each other tools, sharing food. The universal language of I'm not a threat. Maybe some encounters were hostile. Competition for resources. Territory. Hunting grounds. Maybe there were conflicts. Fights. Deaths. The archaeological record shows violence existed. Both species have bones with healed injuries from weapons. Both knew how to hurt each other. But violence couldn't have been the norm. You don't interbreed with someone you're constantly fighting. You don't have children with enemies. The DNA evidence suggests peaceful contact. At least sometimes, at least enough. Maybe some encounters were curious, watching each other from a distance, observing, learning, seeing how the other group hunted, what tools they used, how they made fire where they camped. Both groups were smart. Both could learn. Neanderthals saw modern human tools and might have copied them. Modern humans saw Neanderthal techniques and might have adopted them. There's archaeological evidence of this. Tool styles that seemed to cross between groups, techniques that spread. Maybe some encounters were economic. Trade, exchange. Modern humans had shells from the coast. Neanderthals had flint from local quarries. Why not trade? Why not benefit both groups? There's evidence of long-distance trade networks in modern human sites, shells and stones moving hundreds of miles. Maybe some of that trade involved Neanderthals. Maybe they were part of the network, at least at first. And some encounters were clearly intimate. The DNA proves it. Modern humans and Neanderthals had relationships, had children, raised those children together, or at least accepted them into the group. What did those relationships look like? We'll never know fully. Were they love, convenience, necessity, curiosity? But they happened, and the children survived. Tala, over the course of 2 years, learns the stranger woman's language. It's not easy. The sounds are different. The grammar is strange. The way they structure ideas is foreign to her. But she learns. She's young. Her mind is flexible. She also teaches them her language. The whistles, the gestures, the ways her people communicate. And she spends more and more time with the strangers, less time with her own band. Vorak watches this with mixed feelings. Pride that his daughter is brave enough to cross boundaries. Fear that he's losing her. Confusion about what it means. And then Tala tells him she's pregnant. The father is one of the strangers. A young man named, well, Vorak can't pronounce his name. It has sounds Vorak's throat can't make. But Tala can say it. She's learned. What does Vorak do? He's angry at first. This isn't how things are supposed to work. You marry within the band. You keep the blood pure. You maintain tradition. But Tala is happy, and the young man treats her well, and the strangers welcome her. And Vorak realizes the world is changing. He can resist it, hold on to the old ways, insist Tala come back, or he can adapt. Loop number 4, remember, why did the mixing stop? Hold that thought, we're not there yet. By 45,000 years ago, modern humans were in Europe, deep in Neanderthal territory, not just the Middle East, not just the edges, the heartland, France, Spain, Germany, Italy, places Neanderthals had lived for 200,000 years. The two populations overlapped, shared the landscape, lived in the same regions, hunted the same animals, used the same caves, sometimes at the same time, sometimes taking turns. Sometimes one group would live in a cave leave, and the other group would move in. There's a site in France where archaeologists found layers. Neanderthal tools, then modern human tools, then Neanderthal tools, again, then modern human tools. Back and forth over thousands of years. The same cave, different occupants, taking turns. Were they avoiding each other? Did one group leave when the other arrived? Or were they there at different seasons? Neanderthals in winter, modern humans in summer sharing without meeting. Or maybe they did meet. Maybe they knew each other. Maybe the Neanderthals who left the cave in spring knew the modern humans would arrive. Maybe they'd seen them before. Maybe they'd even talked. The archaeological evidence shows both groups living in close proximity, within miles of each other, sometimes in the same valleys, sometimes using the same resources. But the evidence doesn't show them living together. No mixed camps, no shared sites, no blended cultures. They coexisted, but separately, like neighbors who share a fence but never share a meal. And during this time, something was changing. The balance was shifting. Modern humans were growing in number, spreading, innovating, creating new tools, new techniques, new art, new ways of living. Neanderthals were holding steady, doing what they had always done, making the same tools, living the same way, surviving, but not expanding, not changing. The meeting between modern humans and Neanderthals wasn't a single event. It was a process. Thousands of years, thousands of encounters, some peaceful, some violent, some intimate, some distant. But the outcome was already being written in the differences between them, in their tools and their culture, and their ability to adapt. In things you couldn't see just by looking, things in their minds, things in how they organized, things in how they thought about the future. The modern humans who entered Europe brought more than just themselves. They brought a way of being human that was different, more connected, more innovative, more flexible, more able to change with changing circumstances. They didn't have to destroy the Neanderthals. They didn't have to fight them. They just had to be different. Different in ways that mattered. Different in ways that gave them an edge, a small edge. But over thousands of years, a small edge is enough. The meeting was the beginning of the end, not because of what happened in any single encounter, but because of what those encounters revealed. Two ways of being human, two strategies for survival. Both had worked for hundreds of thousands of years, but the world was changing. The climate was shifting, resources were moving, and in a changing world, flexibility matters. Innovation matters. The ability to adapt matters. Modern humans had that. Neanderthals didn't. Not enough, not the same way. The meeting showed it, made it visible, put the two strategies side by side. And over time, one strategy would prove better suited for what was coming, better suited for survival, better suited for inheriting the earth. The modern humans and Neanderthals met, mixed, coexisted, and then slowly one group began to fade while the other flourished. Not because of any single thing, but because of everything. All the small differences, all the tiny advantages, all the ways they were different adding up over millennia. The meeting was just the beginning. The real story is what happened next, how coexistence became competition, how competition became replacement, how one species survived while the other disappeared. And we're about to explore exactly how. 5 reasons, 5 differences, each one small, but together unstoppable. Slow down for a minute, take a breath. We've covered a lot of ground in the last 20 minutes or so. Origins, capabilities, first contact, the beginning of the end. If you need to pause, that's fine. Stand up, stretch, pour another drink, whatever you need. This story isn't going anywhere, and neither am I. We have time, all the time in the world. Because this story, the story of why Neanderthals vanished and we survived, isn't just about them. It's about us, about what makes us human, about what it takes to endure when everything you know changes. And that's a story worth taking our time with. So breathe, settle in, and when you're ready, we'll continue. Because the next part, the part about why the differences mattered, is where things get really interesting. Where we start to understand not just what happened, but why, and what it means for you, right now, today, in 2024, a world that's changing faster than most of us can keep up with. The Neanderthals have something to teach us, if we're willing to listen. I know that sounds simple, almost too simple to be the answer to a question as big as extinction, but let me show you what I mean. And remember, this connects to loop number 1. Why did they disappear? This is the first piece of that answer. Imagine a town. A small town in Montana. I grew up in a place like this. 300 people. Everyone knew everyone. One main street, a diner, a general store, a gas station, a church. In 1958, when I was a year old, an influenza epidemic hit that town. 15 people died, mostly elderly, a few children, one middle-aged man who everyone thought was healthy as a horse. 15 people out of 300, 5% of the population. The town grieved, held funerals, supported the families, and then slowly life went back to normal. Babies were born, people moved in from neighboring counties. Within a decade, you could barely tell the epidemic had happened. The town survived. Now imagine that same town, but with only 30 people instead of 300. The epidemic kills 3 people, same percentage. 10% now, actually, because the numbers are smaller and randomness matters more. But 3 people out of 30 is different. That's the guy who knew how to fix the water pump. That's the woman who was teaching the children to read. That's the young man who everyone expected would take over his father's farm. When they die, their knowledge dies with them. Their skills vanish. The community loses not just people, but capabilities, functions, futures, and the genetic diversity collapses. Those 3 people represented bloodlines, variations, different immune systems, different strengths, different ways of being human. When you only have 30 people, you can't afford to lose anyone. And if another crisis hits before you recover, a hard winter, a drought, a pack of wolves, you might not have enough people left to survive it. That's the math of small populations. And that's the situation Neanderthals were in. The best estimates suggest maybe 70,000 Neanderthals lived in all of Europe at their peak. Maybe. Some scientists think it was less, way less, maybe 10,000 to 20,000 scattered across an entire continent. Compare that to modern humans. We don't know exact numbers. We can't. But the evidence suggests modern human populations were larger. Maybe 10 times larger. Maybe more. At any given moment, there were simply more of us than there were of them, and that difference compounded over time. Here's what it looked like on the ground. Vorak's band has 23 people, 3 elderly, 5 children too young to hunt, 15 adults of working age. Of those 15, 3 are injured right now. One broke his foot falling on rocks. One has an infected wound from a cave bear. One is sick with a fever that won't break. That leaves 12 healthy adults. 12 people to hunt, to gather, to make tools, to keep the fires burning, to watch for predators, to care for the young and old. It's enough, barely, but there's no margin for error. If the hunt fails tomorrow, people go hungry. If 2 more people get sick, the whole band is in danger. If a predator attacks and kills someone, They lose not just a person, but all the knowledge that person carried. Vorak knows 17 ways to track different animals. His brother knows 12. Between them, they know 23. Because some overlap, some are unique. If Vorak dies, 5 unique tracking methods die with him. No one else knows them. This is the reality of small populations. A band of 25 Neanderthals living in a valley had to worry about everything. Hunting, gathering, making tools, raising children, surviving winter. If someone got hurt, the whole group suffered. If someone died, they lost knowledge, skills, experience. There was no backup, no help from the next valley over, because the next valley might be empty, or the group there might be days away. Too far to help, too far to trade with, too far to share knowledge. Neanderthals lived in small, isolated groups. The archaeological evidence shows this clearly. Their tools don't spread far. Their techniques don't travel. Each group seems to do things their own way. Isolated, independent, alone. Modern humans were different, not because we were smarter, not because we were tougher, because there were more of us. More people meant more groups meant more contact. More contact meant more trade, more ideas, more innovation, more everything. A modern human band of 25 people wasn't alone. There was another band 2 valleys over, and another beyond that, and another, a network. Loose, informal, but real. If you needed flint, you could trade for it. If you needed help hunting a big animal, you could ask. If someone in your group died and took their knowledge with them, someone in another group might know the same thing. Population density creates culture. It creates the possibility of specialization, of trade, of shared knowledge, of backup plans. Neanderthals couldn't afford specialists. Everyone had to know everything. How to hunt, how to make tools, how to find plants, how to survive. There was no room for someone who was just really good at making spear points. Everyone had to be generalists. Modern humans had more flexibility. In a larger population, someone could focus on making the best spear points. Someone else could focus on tracking. Someone else on gathering. Specialization makes everyone better at what they do. And here's the thing about population. It compounds. It builds on itself. A larger population is more stable. If a winter is harsh and some people die, the population can recover. There are enough people left to rebuild, to have children, to pass on knowledge. A small population is fragile. One bad winter, one epidemic, one run of bad luck, and suddenly you're below the threshold. Not enough people to maintain the group. Not enough genetic diversity. Not enough knowledge to pass on. Neanderthals were always close to that edge. The genetic evidence shows it. Their DNA has less diversity than modern humans. Way less. They went through population bottlenecks. Times when the numbers dropped so low that only a few groups survived. Genetic diversity collapsed and never fully recovered. Modern humans had bottlenecks too. We almost went extinct. Around 70,000 years ago, the human population might have dropped to 10,000 people. Maybe less. A volcanic eruption, climate change, something nearly wiped us out. But we recovered. We bounced back. By 40,000 years ago, we were spreading across the world, growing, expanding, thriving. Neanderthals never bounced back. Their population stayed small, stayed fragile, stayed vulnerable. Why, part of it was biology. Neanderthals had longer childhoods than earlier humans. Their kids took longer to grow up, needed more care, more resources, more time. That's actually a sign of intelligence. Longer childhoods mean more time to learn, more time for the brain to develop, more time to absorb culture and knowledge. But it also means fewer babies. A Neanderthal woman might have a child every 4 or 5 years, maybe longer. Compare that to modern humans. We could have babies faster, every 2 or 3 years, sometimes less. Over thousands of years, that difference adds up. Modern humans could grow their population faster, could recover from setbacks quicker, could expand into new territories with more people. Part of it was also strategy. Neanderthals were ambush hunters. They got close to animals, really close, used thrusting spears, stabbed prey at close range. This worked. They were strong enough to do it, tough enough to survive the injuries. The bones show it, healed fractures, broken ribs, crushed fingers, the injuries you'd expect from fighting large animals up close. But it was dangerous, really dangerous. Hunting like that, people got hurt. People died. The mortality rate was high, especially for young adults. The people who should have been having children. Modern humans hunted differently. We used throwing spears, atlatls later, eventually bows. We killed from a distance. Safer, less risk, fewer injuries. More hunters survived to have children. Population growth isn't just about birth rates. It's about survival rates. Modern humans survived longer, had more children, passed on more knowledge. I'm going to tell you something I haven't told many people. Back in 1975, I was doing field research in Wyoming, remote site, hours from the nearest town. I lived alone in a cabin for 6 months documenting an archaeological dig. No phone, no radio, no internet, obviously. This was before all that. One person checking on me once a week bringing supplies. In month 4, I got sick. Some kind of flu, high fever, chills. I was alone in that cabin, barely able to stand. If it had been serious, if it had been pneumonia or something worse, I would have died. Nobody would have known until the supply run 3 days later. And by then it might have been too late. I survived, obviously, but I think about that experience a lot. That was the Neanderthal life. Small groups, isolated. If something goes wrong, you handle it alone. We modern humans, we live differently. We live in cities, communities, networks. When I got sick after Margaret died, my daughter flew in from California. Friends brought food. Neighbors checked on me. I was never alone. That's the difference population makes. Not in theory, in practice, in lived experience, in survival. Numbers matter, not because bigger is always better, but because isolation is deadly, because knowledge needs to flow, because innovation needs critical mass, because when the world changes, you need options. And options come from having enough people, enough connections, enough diversity to weather the storm. The Neanderthals were strong. Individually, each one could probably have beaten any of us in single combat, but they were few. And few is fragile. Remember that. Few is fragile. This connects to loop number 3, what was missing. Part of what was missing was numbers, raw population, the foundation for everything else. Let me tell you about Tasmania. It's going to seem like a detour, but I promise it connects. And this is going to answer something about loop number 5. How does innovation die in small populations? Tasmania is an island off the southern coast of Australia. Beautiful place. Mountains, forests, coastline that takes your breath away. 10,000 years ago, rising sea levels cut Tasmania off from the Australian mainland. The Aboriginal people living there were isolated, completely isolated. No contact with mainland Australia or anywhere else. Just a few thousand people on an island. And over the next 10,000 years, something strange happened. They lost technologies. Bone tools disappeared. Fishing stopped. Complex tools were abandoned. Not because they forgot, but because with such a small population, if the few people who knew a skill died before teaching it properly, the knowledge was gone forever. This isn't speculation. This is documented. This is what happens when populations get too small. Culture needs a minimum number of people to sustain itself. Below that threshold, knowledge gets lost. Skills disappear. Innovation stops. Neanderthals might have faced the same problem. Small populations, isolated groups, knowledge that couldn't spread, skills that died with individuals, a slow erosion of culture. Modern humans had the opposite. Growing populations, connected groups, knowledge that spread and built and compounded, each generation adding to what came before. The math is brutal when you think about it. If modern humans outnumbered Neanderthals 10 to 1, then every advantage modern humans had was multiplied by 10. 10 times as many innovations, 10 times as many good ideas, 10 times as many chances to solve problems. And population creates competition, not just between species, within species. Modern human groups competed with each other for resources, for territory, for status. That competition drove innovation, pushed groups to be better, faster, smarter, more efficient. The best tools spread, the best techniques spread, the best strategies spread, because groups that didn't adopt them fell behind, lost out, disappeared. Neanderthals didn't have that pressure, not the same way. Their populations were too small, too isolated. There wasn't enough competition to drive rapid change. I want you to imagine something with me. 2 valleys, side by side, separated by a mountain range. In one valley, Vorax Neanderthal group, 23 people. They've lived there for generations. They know every rock, every tree, every animal migration route. They're survivors. They're good at what they do. In the other valley, a modern human group, also 23 people. They arrived recently, still learning the land. On the surface, the Neanderthals have the advantage. But zoom out, Vorax group is alone. The nearest other Neanderthal group is 50 miles away. Contact is rare, maybe twice a year. Trade is minimal. The modern human group is part of a network. 10 other groups within a 100-mile radius. Regular contact, regular trade, regular flow of information. Messengers travel between groups every few weeks. When someone invents something useful in one camp, the neighboring camps know about it within a month. Now a crisis hits. A harsh winter. The herds migrate early. Food becomes scarce. Vorax group hunts harder, works harder, survives on their strength and knowledge. Some of them die. The eldest? 2 of the children. But most survive. The group shrinks from 23 to 19, but endures. The modern human group does something different. They send word to neighboring groups. We're struggling. Can you help? 2 groups send dried fish. 1 group sends preserved berries. Another group sends information. The herds move to the next valley over. We can help you hunt if you share the meat. The modern human group survives the winter with minimal losses. 1 elderly person. That's all. And the next year, when one of those helping groups faces their own crisis, the debt is repaid. This is network effect. This is what population density enables. Not individual strength, collective resilience. By 40,000 years ago, the difference was visible in the archaeological record. Modern humans were everywhere in Europe. Neanderthals were retreating, pushed into marginal areas, mountains, peninsulas, places modern humans hadn't reached yet. It wasn't a war, it was displacement. Modern humans didn't have to fight, they just had to be there, using resources, hunting animals, occupying the best territories. And there were more of them, always more of them. Neanderthals couldn't compete with numbers, couldn't outbreed modern humans, couldn't expand fast enough, couldn't innovate fast enough, couldn't adapt fast enough. The population difference created a ratchet effect. Modern humans grew. Neanderthals shrank. And once that process started, it was hard to stop. Maybe impossible. Small populations are vulnerable to random chance. A harsh winter kills more people when there are fewer to begin with. A disease spreads faster. A drought hits harder. Each setback makes the population smaller, makes the next setback more likely. A spiral. Modern humans had cushion. Enough people to absorb losses, enough groups to maintain culture, enough diversity to adapt, enough children to ensure the future. Neanderthals didn't. They were always on the edge, always vulnerable, always one disaster away from collapse. And the disasters came. Climate change, shifting resources, competition from modern humans, disease possibly, bad luck certainly, all of it hitting a population that couldn't afford to lose anyone. By 30,000 years ago, Neanderthals were down to a few thousand, maybe less, scattered in isolated pockets. Spain, Croatia, Gibraltar, the last remnants. The final groups, modern humans kept growing, kept spreading, kept innovating. The population advantage had become overwhelming, unstoppable. This is the first reason. The population hypothesis. It's not flashy, it's not dramatic. There's no single moment, no battle, no catastrophe, just math, just numbers, just the slow grinding reality that more people have more options, more resilience, more future. It's not the whole answer, but it's the foundation. Loop number 1, why did they disappear? First answer, they were too few. Loop number 5, why did innovation die? Answer, not enough people to maintain it. Numbers matter, population matters. Remember that. But population explains a lot without explaining everything. Because Neanderthals had one advantage we haven't talked about yet. One thing that should have let them compete even with smaller numbers. One thing that should have kept them alive. Food. Neanderthals were better at getting food than we were. Way better, at least at first. Think about what it takes to survive in Ice Age Europe. You need calories, lots of them. The cold burns through energy. Your body works overtime just staying warm. You need fat, protein, constant fuel. Neanderthals were built for this. Their bodies needed more calories than ours, maybe 4,000 to 5,000 calories a day. That's double what most modern humans need. But they could get it. They were incredible hunters. I mentioned their hunting style earlier. Ambush predators, getting close, using thrusting spears. Dangerous, but effective. Vorak is teaching Tala how to hunt red deer. You have to get downwind. Move slowly. The deer's eyes are good, but their noses are better. One wrong move, one shift in wind, and they bolt. You get within 20 paces. 15 if you're good, 10 if you're brave and stupid. Then you run, full speed. The deer runs too, but you're angling to cut it off. Your partner is on the other side doing the same. The deer panics, turns, and that's when you strike. Thrusting spear, all your weight behind it. Aim for the heart, the lungs, anywhere vital. Sometimes you miss. The deer escapes. You go home with nothing but exhaustion. Sometimes you connect, but the deer isn't dead. It runs with your spear in it. You have to track it, sometimes for hours, until blood loss stops it. Sometimes you get hurt. Antlers can gore you. Hooves can crush ribs. I've seen it happen, Vorik tells Tala. I've been hurt myself. But when it works, when you bring down a red deer, you feed the band for 3 days. 4 if you're careful. That's worth the risk. They hunted everything. Mammoths, woolly rhinos, giant deer, cave bears, bison, reindeer. If it was big and had meat, Neanderthals could kill it. The bones at their sites prove this. Animal remains, butchered, processed, eaten. They weren't picky. They ate whatever they could catch, and they could catch a lot. Modern humans hunted too, but differently. We threw spears from a distance. Later we used atlatls, spear throwers that gave us range and power. Safer, but less reliable. You miss more often when you're throwing. The animal runs away. You go home hungry. Early modern humans in Europe probably struggled at first. The climate was harsh. The animals were huge. The competition was fierce. Neanderthals had been there for 200,000 years. They knew every hunting ground, every animal migration route, every trick. We were the newcomers, the outsiders, learning as we went. So how did we compete? How did we get enough food to not just survive, but thrive, to grow our population while theirs shrank? The answer is diversity. We ate everything. Neanderthals were specialists, meat eaters, almost exclusively. The chemical analysis of their bones proves it. Their diet was 80 to 90% meat, maybe more. They were hypercarnivores, like wolves, like lions. That works when game is plentiful, when the herds are thick, when hunting is good. But when it's not, when the herds migrate, when winter hits hard and animals disappear, you're in trouble. Modern humans were omnivores, true omnivores. We ate meat when we could get it, but we also ate plants, roots, seeds, nuts, berries, fish, shellfish, birds, eggs, insects, everything. The archaeological sites show this. Modern human camps have a wider variety of animal bones, not just big game, small animals too, rabbits, hares, birds, fish bones, shellfish, evidence of plant processing, grinding stones, hearths with burned seeds. We diversified, spread our risk. If hunting was bad, we gathered. If gathering was slim, we fished. If the fish weren't biting, we found something else. Always something else. Tala learns this from the stranger woman. Her name is Asha, and she speaks the new language that Tala is learning slowly. Asha shows Tala how to find the roots that are good to eat, how to dig them without destroying the plant so it grows back next year. She shows Tala how to catch fish in a woven trap, how to set the trap in moving water, how to check it each morning. She shows Tala which berries are safe, which are poisonous, which are medicinal. Vorac's people know some of this. They eat plants when meat is scarce. But it's not their main skill, not their focus. Asha's people do it all the time. Half their diet is plants, fish, shellfish, things that don't run away, things you can gather reliably. Tala brings this knowledge back to her band. Some of them listen, some scoff. We are hunters, they say. We are strong. We don't need to grub in the dirt for roots like weak people. But Vorik listens, because he's seen hard winters. He's seen times when the herds don't come, and his people starve. Having another option seems wise. This matters more than it sounds. Dietary diversity is survival insurance. It means you're never dependent on one food source, never vulnerable to one failure. Neanderthals put all their calories in one basket. Meat. When meat was scarce, they starved. The bones show evidence of this. Periods of malnutrition, stress markers, times when food ran short. Modern humans had backup plans, multiple backup plans. That flexibility kept us fed, kept our population growing, kept us healthy enough to have children. But it's not just what we ate, it's how we got it. Neanderthals hunted individually or in small groups. The evidence suggests groups of maybe 3 to 5 hunters working together, coordinating, but small scale. Modern humans hunted in larger groups, 10, 15, 20 people. Coordinated drives, surrounding herds, pushing animals toward cliffs or into box canyons. Mass kills. There are sites in France, modern human sites, where hundreds of reindeer were killed at once, driven over cliffs, butchered, the meat processed and stored. Enough food to feed a large group for weeks. Neanderthals didn't do this. Not that we've found. Their kills are smaller, more individual, one animal at a time, or a few. Why the difference? Population again, partly. You need enough people to organize a mass hunt, enough hunters to surround a herd, enough people to process all that meat before it spoils. But it's also strategy. Modern humans were better at coordination, better at planning, better at working together in large groups. And we invented tools that helped. The atlatl, a spear thrower, simple device, wooden shaft with a hook on the end. You put your spear in it, use it like a lever. Suddenly you can throw a spear twice as far, twice as hard. This changed everything. You could hunt from a distance, stay safe, kill animals that were too dangerous to approach, hit fast-moving targets. The atlatl made modern humans better hunters without getting stronger or tougher. Neanderthals eventually adopted the atlatl. The evidence shows this, but late, very late, after modern humans arrived. They learned it from us. Tala sees an atlatl for the first time when she's 17. Asha's brother demonstrates. He throws a spear farther than Tala has ever seen anyone throw anything. It kills a deer at 40 paces. Vorik asks to see the device, studies it, tries it. It's awkward at first. His body is built for close combat, not throwing. His arms are too heavy, his movements too slow. But he sees the advantage. He makes one, teaches himself to use it, teaches others in his band. But by then, the modern humans have been using atlatls for thousands of years. They're better, faster, more accurate. We also invented fishing technology, hooks, nets, traps, ways to catch fish in bulk, to harvest rivers and lakes and oceans. Neanderthals fished sometimes. There's evidence of it, but rarely. It wasn't a major part of their diet, maybe because they didn't have the right tools. Maybe because they never developed the techniques. Modern humans went all in on fishing. Coastal sites show massive shell middens, piles of discarded shells 10 feet deep, evidence of thousands of meals, generations of people eating seafood. And seafood is brain food, literally. Omega-3 fatty acids, iodine, nutrients that support brain development. Some scientists think this is why modern humans developed larger brains relative to body size, why our children's brains grew faster, why we could support the energy costs of bigger brains. Neanderthal brains were bigger than ours actually, but they needed all that brain power for their bodies, for coordinating their heavy muscles, for processing sensory information in the cold and dark. Modern human brains could dedicate more processing power to thinking, planning, imagining, creating, because our bodies were more efficient, because our diet was more diverse, because we weren't burning every calorie just staying alive. There's also the question of storage. How do you keep food from spoiling in Ice Age Europe? This was easier. The cold helped. You could freeze meat, keep it for weeks, even months. Both Neanderthals and modern humans did this. But modern humans went further. We invented smoking, drying, preserving fish and meat so it lasted longer, stayed edible through seasons when fresh food was scarce. There's evidence of this at modern human sites. Hearths designed for smoking meat, storage pits, places where food was kept for later, planning for the future, building reserves. Neanderthals stored food too, but less evidence of long-term storage, less evidence of preservation techniques. Maybe they didn't need it. Maybe they could always hunt fresh meat until they couldn't. And here's where food connects to population. Better food security means more children survive. Women who are well-fed have healthier pregnancies. Babies who get enough nutrition grow stronger. Children who don't go hungry reach adulthood. Modern humans had better food security, more diverse diet, more reliable sources, better storage, better tools. All of it added up to more surviving children, faster population growth. Neanderthals were always on the edge, one bad hunting season away from hunger, one harsh winter away from starvation. Their population couldn't grow as fast, couldn't recover from setbacks as quickly. There's also cooking. Both species use fire, both cook their food, but modern humans might have been better at it. The evidence suggests more sophisticated hearths, better fire control, more varied cooking techniques, baking, roasting, boiling in skin bags with hot stones, different methods for different foods. Neanderthals cooked too, but their hearths are simpler, less variety in cooking methods. Maybe they didn't need it. Meat is meat. Cook it and eat it. Simple. But when you're eating plants and fish and everything else, you need more techniques, more knowledge, more skill. Modern humans developed that knowledge, passed it down, improved it over generations. Food is also social. Sharing food builds bonds, creates obligations, strengthens groups. Modern humans were better at this. The evidence suggests we shared food more widely, not just within family groups, between groups. Trade networks where food moved from coast to interior, from valleys to mountains. Neanderthals probably shared food too, but within smaller circles, family, close kin, not the wider networks modern humans built. Those networks mattered. If your group was starving, you could trade for food, ask for help, rely on relationships built over years. Safety net. Neanderthals didn't have that safety net. Each group was more isolated, more self-reliant. When food ran short, they suffered alone. There's one more thing. Waste. Modern humans were efficient. We used every part of the animal, meat for eating, bones for tools, sinew for thread, hides for clothing, antlers for weapons, fat for lamps. Nothing wasted. Neanderthals used animal parts too, but less completely. The archaeological evidence shows more waste, more bones left with meat on them, more parts discarded. Why? Maybe because they could afford to. When game was plentiful, why bother with the scraps? Just kill another animal. But that strategy only works when game stays plentiful. When it doesn't, you're in trouble. Modern humans couldn't afford waste. We needed every calorie, every resource. That efficiency became habit, became culture, became the way we did things. And efficiency compounds. If you can get more calories from each kill, you need to kill less often. Less risk, less energy spent, more time for other things, more resources for children, more population growth. The food advantage wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a single breakthrough. It was 1,000 small differences. Eating fish, using atlatls, preserving meat, sharing resources, being efficient, all of it adding up. Over time, those small differences became big ones. Modern humans were better fed, had more children, grew faster, spread wider. Neanderthals stayed the same, stuck with what worked, what had always worked, until it didn't anymore. By 40,000 years ago, the gap was visible. Modern humans were thriving. Neanderthals were struggling, not because they forgot how to hunt, not because the animals disappeared, because the competition changed, because someone else was eating the same food, using the same resources, and doing it more efficiently. Food is survival, but it's also more than that. It's culture, it's innovation, it's planning and sharing and adapting. It's all the things that made modern humans different. Neanderthals were amazing hunters, tough, strong, skilled. They survived 400,000 years by being the best at what they did. But we survived by being flexible, by eating everything, by adapting to anything, by never depending too much on any one thing. In the end, that flexibility mattered more than strength. That diversity mattered more than specialization. That efficiency mattered more than power. Food didn't kill the Neanderthals, but it might have kept us alive long enough to outlast them, to grow while they shrank, to spread while they retreated. Second answer to loop number one. They couldn't adapt their diet fast enough when the world changed. And the world was changing. Fast. Faster than anything Vorak's people had experienced in living memory. Let me show you what I mean. Vorak is 43 now. Tala is 17 and 7 months pregnant with her hybrid child. The winter is harder than any Vorak remembers. It's not just cold. Cold they can handle. Cold is normal. This is different. The snow comes early, before the leaves fall, and it doesn't stop. It snows for days, then a brief pause, then more snow. By midwinter, the snow is deeper than Vorak is tall. The band has to dig tunnels to get from their cave to the hunting grounds. But there's nothing to hunt. The reindeer herds that usually winter in the valley, they didn't come this year. The band waited, watched, nothing. The herds went somewhere else, following food, following milder weather. Vorak's people are stuck. They can't move through snow this deep, can't travel to find the herds. They eat their stored food, dried meat from autumn, preserved fat. It runs out by the second month of winter. They eat the leather from old clothes, bone marrow, things they never thought they'd eat. 2 of the children die, the weakest ones. Not enough food. Kael the elder with the bad hip dies in his sleep, just stops breathing one night. Probably starvation, though Vorak tells the band it was age. By spring, when the snow finally melts, the band is down to 17 people. 6 dead in one winter. This isn't normal. This isn't the world Vorak knows. And it's not just his band. When he finally makes contact with the nearest Neanderthal group, 50 miles away, they've lost 5 people too. Across Europe, the same story is repeating. The climate is shifting, and it's shifting fast. Let me explain what was happening. Around 40,000 years ago, the Earth entered a period of rapid climate instability. Temperature swings of 10 degrees Celsius in just a few decades, sometimes faster. Ice advancing, ice retreating, forests dying, grasslands spreading, then reversing. The world couldn't make up its mind whether it wanted to be frozen or temperate. And in that instability, everything that depended on stability suffered. We can see this in ice cores from Greenland. Scientists drill down through miles of ice. Each layer represents 1 year of snowfall. Trapped in that snow are tiny bubbles of ancient air. By analyzing those bubbles, we can measure the temperature of the atmosphere when that snow fell. And what the ice cores show is dramatic. Sharp drops, sharp rises, back and forth, like a fever that won't break. 39,000 years ago, temperature drops 5 degrees in 30 years. 38,500 years ago, temperature rises 3 degrees in 20 years. 38,000 years ago, another drop, 7 degrees in 40 years. This isn't gradual change. This is whiplash. And for animals, for people, adapted to specific temperatures, specific vegetation, specific prey, this is catastrophic. The herds migrate, following the food, following the climate they're adapted to. Reindeer that usually winter in southern France now winter in Spain or North Africa. Mammoth herds that used to stay in one region now roam hundreds of miles unpredictably, chasing grasslands that appear and disappear. Neanderthals were adapted to Ice Age Europe. Their bodies were built for it, short, stocky, heavy, perfect for retaining heat. Their big noses warmed frigid air before it hit their lungs. Their thick bones and heavy muscles generated heat just by existing. They were living furnaces, perfect for cold, but that specialization came with a cost. They couldn't easily move into warmer climates. Their bodies overheated, used too many calories just staying cool. When the climate shifted and some regions became warmer, modern humans moved in, thrived. Neanderthals couldn't follow. And when the cold regions shifted location, when the tundra that used to be in France was now in Spain, Neanderthals had to move. But moving is hard when you're adapted to one specific place. When you know every valley, every cave, every hunting ground. When your population is small and you can't afford to split up and explore. Modern humans were more flexible. We weren't as physically adapted to the cold. Our bodies were lighter, less heat generating, but we adapted culturally instead of physically. We made better clothes, fitted clothing sewn with bone needles, layered, insulated with fur. We built better shelters, not just caves, structures made from wood and bone and hide. We controlled fire better, used it not just for cooking, but for heating, for extending the day into night. Whatever the environment needed, we invented. And that meant we could live anywhere. Tropics, deserts, mountains, coasts, tundra, forests. We adapted to all of it. That flexibility meant we could expand, move into new territories, find new resources, grow our population in places Neanderthals couldn't go. Tala's hybrid child is born in spring. A boy, healthy, strong. He has Tala's eyes, but his father's chin, a mix of features that makes him look neither fully Neanderthal nor fully modern human, just human. Vorak looks at his grandson and feels something complicated. Pride, fear, confusion, hope. This child represents the future. But what kind of future? One where his people fade away, one where they blend into the strangers until there's no distinction, or one where they survive? He doesn't know. The band is struggling, 17 people, not enough to hunt effectively, not enough genetic diversity, not enough skills. They need help. Vorak makes a decision. He goes to the modern human camp, the one where Tala has been living part-time, where her husband's people are, and he asks, not in their language, not in his, but in gestures, in the universal language of need. Help. The modern humans help. They share food, dried fish, smoked meat, preserved berries. They teach Vorak's people how to fish, how to set nets, how to find roots even in early spring when everything looks dead. They offer something else too. Join us, Tala translates. Live together, one band, stronger together. Some of Vorak's people want this, the younger ones mostly. They've seen the modern humans thrive while their own band shrinks. Some refuse, the older ones. We are not them, they say. We are us. We don't mix. Vorak is caught in the middle. This is loop number 4, remember? Why did interbreeding stop? Here's part of the answer. It didn't stop because of violence, not because the two groups hated each other. It stopped because of choice. Some Neanderthals chose to merge, to join modern human bands, to have hybrid children, to let go of pure identity in exchange for survival. Their genes survive. In you, in me, in billions of people. Other Neanderthals chose purity, chose to remain separate, chose tradition over adaptation. Their genes died with them. Both choices are understandable. Both have dignity, but only one led to genetic survival. Climate was the hammer that forced the choice. In stable times, Neanderthals could maintain their way of life indefinitely. They'd proven it for 200,000 years. But these weren't stable times. The climate was a chaos engine, unpredictable, violent, unforgiving. And in chaos, rigidity breaks. Flexibility survives. By 38,000 years ago, Neanderthal populations were collapsing. Not everywhere at once, but region by region. In France, populations dropped 90% in 1,000 years. In Germany, Neanderthal sites disappear, replaced by modern human sites. In Spain, a few Neanderthal bands hold on. But they're isolated, disconnected from each other. The climate wasn't the only cause, but it was the trigger. It created stress, scarcity, desperation. And in that environment, every other disadvantage the Neanderthals had, small population, limited networks, specialized diet, became fatal. They couldn't absorb the shocks. They couldn't adapt fast enough. They couldn't change their way of life quickly enough to match the changing world. Modern humans could, and did. Third answer to loop number 1. The climate changed faster than they could adapt. But there's something else, something we haven't fully explored yet, something that might be the most important difference of all. Language. Now, I said earlier that Neanderthals had language, and they did. The evidence is clear. They had the hyoid bone, that little horseshoe-shaped bone in your throat that supports your tongue and helps you make complex sounds. A Neanderthal hyoid bone found in Israel looks almost identical to ours. They had the brain structures for language, Broca's area, Wernicke's area, the neural architecture for producing and understanding speech. They had culture that needed to be transmitted, tool-making techniques, hunting strategies, knowledge of plants and animals. You can't pass that on without some form of language. So yes, they had language, but here's the question. What kind of language? Was it like ours? Full complex, recursive language? Or was it simpler? More limited, and did that limitation matter? Let me explain what I mean by recursive language. Human language has a special property. We can embed ideas within ideas, layer meaning upon meaning. For example, the mammoth that was in the valley where my grandfather hunted when he was young. That sentence has multiple layers. There's a mammoth. It's in a valley. My grandfather hunted there when he was young. Each piece of information is nested inside the others. We do this constantly, without even thinking about it. It allows us to express incredibly complex ideas, to talk about things that happened in the past, things that might happen in the future, things that never happened but could have, hypotheticals, abstractions. We can say if we dig a trap here like the one the group to the east used, we might catch the mammoth that comes through this valley every autumn. That sentence requires you to imagine a trap that doesn't exist yet, a technique learned from another group asterisk, a mammoth that isn't here now but will be in the future asterisk. A plan that connects all of these elements, that's recursive language. Language that lets you think in layers, in time, in possibility. Did Neanderthals have this? We don't know for certain. Their throat anatomy was slightly different. The larynx might have sat higher, limiting the range of sounds they could make. But that doesn't necessarily mean limited language. You can convey complex ideas with fewer sounds if you need to. The real question is, did their brains process language the same way ours do? And here's where it gets interesting. Some researchers think Neanderthals had language, but it was less recursive, more immediate, more concrete. They could say mammoth and valley. But maybe not. If we build trap like the one the Eastern group uses, we can catch the mammoth that will come next season. They could communicate what was happening now, what they saw, what they needed. But maybe they struggled with complex future planning, with hypotheticals, with layered strategies. If that's true, and it's a big if because we can't know for certain, then it would explain a lot. It would explain why their tools stayed the same for so long, why innovation was slow, why techniques didn't spread as fast. Because teaching complex skills requires complex language. Vorek is trying to teach a young hunter how to track wounded prey. Look, he says, pointing to a mark on the ground. Deer. The young hunter nods. Blood, Vorik says, pointing to a dark spot. Hurt. The young hunter nods again. Follow, Vorik says. They follow the trail for half a mile. The blood spots get farther apart. The tracks become erratic. Dying, Vorik says. Soon stop. And eventually they find the deer. Dead, exactly as Vorik predicted. The young hunter has learned something, how to track wounded prey by blood spots and erratic movement. But what Vorik can't explain, what he doesn't have words for, is the deeper pattern, how blood loss affects an animal's gait, how fear and pain change behavior, how to predict where a wounded animal will go based on terrain and instinct. He knows these things, understands them intuitively from decades of experience, but he can't break them down into teachable components, can't explain the why behind the what. So the young hunter learns by watching, by doing, by trial and error. It works, eventually, but it's slow. Now imagine Asha teaching a young modern human the same skill. When you wound a deer, she says, it runs from pain, but after a while the pain becomes less than the tiredness. Then it looks for water. Always water, because blood loss makes thirst. So if you lose the blood trail, find water. A stream, a pool, the deer will be there, or near there. And look at the tracks. See how these are deeper on the right side. The deer is favoring its left side, where you hit it. So it will turn right, always right, because turning left hurts. Follow the blood, but think like the deer. Hurt, scared, thirsty, tired. Where would you go? The young human learns faster, deeper, not just what to do, but why. The underlying principles that can be applied to any wounded animal, any situation. That's the power of recursive language. It lets you teach not just actions, but understanding. Not just what, but why. Not just now, but what might happen next. And that accelerates learning, accelerates innovation, accelerates everything. Here's another example. Modern humans develop a new type of fish trap woven from reeds, shaped like a funnel. Fish swim in but can't swim out. One person invents it, then teaches others, not by demonstration alone, but by explanation. The fish sees the opening, it's narrow so it feels safe. It swims in, but once inside it can't see the opening anymore. It's too wide, so it swims around looking for a way out. But the shape, see the shape, it always leads the fish away from the opening, deeper into the trap. So the key is the shape, the funnel, narrow at the entrance, wide inside, that's what traps them. With that explanation, anyone can make the trap, can modify it, can improve it, can teach it to others, who teach it to others, who teach it to others. Within a generation, every modern human group in the region is using fish traps. Neanderthals see the fish traps. Some try to copy them. But without the explanation, without the why, they struggle. They can see what it looks like, but not how it works, not the principle behind it. Some figure it out through trial and error, but it takes longer, and the technique doesn't spread as widely. Language is also about time travel, not literal time travel, but mental time travel. The ability to think about the past, about the future, about what isn't happening right now. My grandfather told me that 50 years ago there was a harsh winter like this one. The herds didn't come, but his band survived by moving south to the coast and eating shellfish until spring. That sentence requires memory of a story, understanding of past events, application to present circumstances, a plan for the future. If you can't talk about the past, you can't learn from it. If you can't talk about the future, you can't plan for it. You're stuck in the present, reacting, surviving, but not thinking ahead. Modern humans could think ahead. The herds are late this year. If they don't come by next moon, we should move to the coast. Last time this happened, the band that stayed here starved. The band that moved survived. That's planning, based on history, applied to the future. Neanderthals could plan too, but maybe not as far ahead, maybe not as complexly. They could say, herds not here, need find food. But maybe not if the herds don't arrive within 2 weeks, we should relocate to the coast, which is a 5-day journey south where we can sustain ourselves on shellfish and seal meat for up to 3 months if necessary, based on what happened to the southern band 40 years ago. That's a huge difference. And over time, that difference compounds. Groups that can plan farther ahead survive more crises. Groups that can learn from the distant past avoid repeating mistakes. Groups that can coordinate complex multi-step strategies accomplish more. Language also enables something else critical: collective memory. Modern humans told stories. Stories about ancestors, about heroes, about mistakes and triumphs, about the world and how it works. Those stories carried knowledge, wisdom, warnings. Never camp in the low valley in spring. My great-grandmother's band did that once. The river flooded, 6 people drowned. That story saves lives for generations. Without language to carry it, that knowledge dies with the people who learned it the hard way. Neanderthals had knowledge too, passed down parent to child. But if their language was more limited, their stories were more limited, more immediate, less detailed, less able to preserve complex information over multiple generations. This is speculation. I want to be clear about that. We don't have recordings of Neanderthal speech. We can't know exactly what their language was like. But the evidence suggests a difference. The slow pace of innovation, the limited spread of new techniques, the smaller networks, all of it consistent with a language that works for immediate needs but struggles with abstraction, future planning, and complex cultural transmission. And in a changing world, a world where the old ways don't work anymore, that limitation becomes fatal. You need to be able to say the world is different now. We need to do things differently. Here's how. Here's why. If you can't say that, if you can only say hungry, need food, then you can't adapt fast enough. Vorak knows the world is changing. He can feel it, see it, but he doesn't have the words to explain what he feels to his band, to convince them to change, to teach them new ways fast enough. Tala has the words. She's learned the modern human language. She can explain, plan, teach. But most of Vorak's band doesn't speak that language, can't learn it, too old, too set in their ways. And even if they could, many wouldn't want to, because language isn't just communication, it's identity. The way you speak is who you are, your people, your culture. Learning a new language means becoming someone new. Some Neanderthals were willing to do that. The young ones mostly, the adaptable ones. Others weren't, the old ones, the traditional ones. And that choice, that linguistic choice, became a survival choice. Fourth answer to loop number 1. Their language might have limited their ability to teach, plan, and adapt quickly enough. Loop number 3. What was missing? Part of what was missing was the linguistic flexibility to imagine and implement rapid cultural change. I need to pause here for a moment, because I want to make something clear. I've been talking about what Neanderthals lacked, what they couldn't do, where they fell short, but that's not the full story. And it's not fair to them. Neanderthals were incredible. They survived for 400,000 years in one of the harshest environments on Earth. They were strong, smart, skilled, compassionate. They made art, music maybe. They cared for their disabled. They buried their dead. They were human in every way that matters. What happened to them wasn't failure. It was bad luck, bad timing, being in the wrong place when the world changed in ways they couldn't predict or control. And here's the thing that haunts me. If the climate hadn't gone crazy, if modern humans hadn't shown up when they did, if any of a dozen variables had been different, Neanderthals might still be here, and we might be the extinct ones. Or maybe we'd have merged completely, become one people. Neanderthal sapiens hybrids. The future is contingent. Nothing is inevitable. Neanderthals didn't lose because they were inferior. They lost because they were unlucky. And because they were different in ways that didn't matter for 200,000 years, but mattered enormously when the world changed. That's not weakness. That's tragedy. So as we move into the final section, as we talk about what happened to the last Neanderthals and what it means for us, I want you to remember that. They weren't stupid. They weren't primitive. They weren't doomed from the start. They were people who tried to survive, who did their best, who adapted as much as they could, and who in the end couldn't adapt quite enough. There's honor in that. There's dignity in that. And there are lessons for us in that. We're past the halfway point now. If you've stayed with me this far, I want to thank you. This isn't an easy story. It's not simple. It doesn't have villains or heroes in the way we usually think of them. Just two kinds of humans trying to survive in a world that didn't care which one made it. If you need a break, take one. Stand up, walk around, get some water. I'll be here when you get back. Because we're about to talk about the part that matters most. Not what happened to them, but what it means for you, right now, today, in 2024, in a world that's changing faster than most of us can process. The Neanderthals have something to teach us, if we're willing to listen. Let me bring together everything we've talked about so far. Remember loop number 1. Why did Neanderthals disappear? Here are the 5 answers, 5 reasons, 5 differences that compounded over thousands of years until one species thrived and the other vanished. First, population. Neanderthals were too few, too scattered, too isolated. When you're small in number, you can't afford losses. You can't maintain diversity. You can't sustain innovation. Knowledge dies with individuals. Skills vanish. The group becomes fragile. Modern humans had numbers. Enough people to absorb shocks. Enough diversity to adapt. Enough connections to share and build and grow. Second, networks. Neanderthals lived in isolated bands, each group on its own. Trade was minimal. Contact was rare. Ideas didn't travel. Modern humans built networks. Groups connected to other groups. Trade routes spanning hundreds of miles. Information flowing. Innovation spreading. When one group struggled, others helped. When one group invented something useful, everyone learned it. Networks created resilience, created culture, created the possibility of cumulative knowledge. Third, diet. Neanderthals were specialists, meat eaters, incredibly good at hunting big game. But specialization is dangerous when the world changes. Modern humans were generalists. We ate everything: meat, fish, plants, shellfish, birds, insects. Whatever worked. When one food source failed, we switched to another. Always adapting, always flexible. Dietary diversity kept us fed when the herds disappeared, kept our population growing when theirs declined. Fourth, climate. Around 40,000 years ago, the climate went wild. Temperature swings of 10 degrees Celsius in just decades. Ice advancing and retreating. Forests dying and returning. Animals migrating or going extinct. Neanderthals were adapted to cold climates. Their bodies were built for it. Short, stocky, heavy, perfect for Ice Age Europe. But that physical specialization limited them. They couldn't easily move into warmer climates, couldn't follow resources when things shifted. Modern humans were more flexible. We adapted culturally instead of physically, made different clothes, different shelters, different tools. Whatever the environment needed, that flexibility meant we could expand, move into new territories, find new resources, grow our population in places Neanderthals couldn't go. Fifth, language. Neanderthals had language, but it might have been more limited than ours, less recursive, fewer layers, less able to express complex nested ideas, less able to plan far into the future or learn from the distant past. Modern humans had full recursive language. We could say the mammoth in the valley that my grandfather mentioned, where his brother killed one 10 years ago, where we could dig a trap like the one the group to the east uses. Layers upon layers, ideas within ideas. Past, present, future, hypothetical, all woven together. That kind of language lets you plan in detail, teach complex skills, tell stories that carry wisdom across generations. Think about things that don't exist yet. Language shaped how we thought, and how we thought shaped what we could do. These five differences weren't separate. They fed into each other, compounded, created a positive feedback loop. Language enabled networks. Networks enabled specialization. Specialization enabled better food strategies. Better food enabled larger populations. Larger populations enabled more innovation. Round and round, each advantage creating the next. For Neanderthals, the loop ran the other way. Small populations, limited networks. Limited networks, limited innovation. Limited innovation meant they couldn't adapt as fast when climate changed. Climate stress reduced population further, a downward spiral. By 39,000 years ago, the outcome was inevitable. Not because Neanderthals were weak or stupid or inferior, because they were few, isolated, specialized, rigid, and we were many, connected, flexible, adaptive. In a stable world, Neanderthals might have thrived forever, but the world isn't stable. It never has been. And in a changing world, adaptation matters more than strength. Connection matters more than independence. Flexibility matters more than specialization. That's the lesson. That's what their extinction teaches us. And here's loop number 2 finally answered. What does that 1 to 4% DNA give you? It gives you immune system variants that help fight certain diseases. It gives you skin adaptations for different climates. It gives you metabolic efficiency for processing fat. What does it take away? It might increase risk for certain conditions. Alzheimer's, type 2 diabetes, some autoimmune disorders. The Neanderthal genes in you are both gift and burden, strength and vulnerability, just like they were. Now let me tell you why all of this matters to you. I want you to think about something for a minute. You're 65 years old, maybe 70, maybe 75, maybe older. You've lived through extraordinary change. When you were born, computers filled entire rooms. The internet didn't exist. Cell phones were science fiction. You wrote letters by hand and waited weeks for replies. The world you grew up in is gone. Jobs you trained for don't exist anymore. Skills you spent decades mastering became obsolete. Communities you knew dissolved. Values you were raised with got questioned or abandoned. And the pace keeps accelerating. Every decade brings more change than the one before. Technology, culture, politics, social norms, everything's shifting faster than you can track. It's disorienting, I know. I feel it too. There's a temptation to retreat, to hold on to what you know, to say, this is who I am, this is how I do things, I'm not changing. That's the Neanderthal impulse. And I understand it. God knows I understand it. But here's what I've learned. That impulse, that refusal to adapt, is the most dangerous thing you can do. Not because change is always good, it's not. Not because the old ways were always wrong, they weren't. But because the world doesn't care whether you adapt or not. It keeps changing anyway. And if you don't change with it, you get left behind. You become isolated, disconnected, irrelevant. You become like the last Neanderthals holding on to tradition while the world passes you by. I don't want that for you. I don't want that for me. So let me give you 5 lessons from what we've learned. 5 things Neanderthals can teach us about how to survive in a changing world. Lesson 1, connections matter more than isolation. You might be thinking, I'm retired. My kids live across the country. My friends are dying or moving to nursing homes. I'm alone. And maybe that's true in the physical sense. But you don't have to be isolated. You have a phone. You can call your kids, your grandkids, your old army buddies or college roommates. You have the internet even if you're not comfortable with it. Video calls, email, social media if you can tolerate it. You have your community, church if you go, the library, the senior center, veterans groups, hobby clubs, volunteer organizations. One connection is all it takes. One person who checks on you. One group you show up to regularly. One relationship that matters. That's your network. That's your lifeline. The Neanderthals died in part because they lived in isolated bands. When one band struggled, there was no help. You don't have to make that mistake. Reach out, even when it's hard, even when you'd rather stay home, because isolation kills. Not immediately, but slowly, surely. It kills your mind first, then your spirit, then your body. Connection keeps you alive. I know this from experience. After Margaret died, I wanted to disappear. Move to that cabin in New Mexico and never talk to anyone again. My daughter wouldn't let me. She called every day, sometimes twice a day, just to talk about nothing, about everything. My neighbor, a man named Robert, who's 83, started showing up on my porch every morning with coffee. Didn't ask permission. Just appeared. We'd sit, drink coffee, talk about the weather mostly. Sometimes about deeper things. Those connections saved me. I'm not exaggerating. They literally saved my life. Because when you're connected, you have a reason to keep going. You have people who notice if you're struggling. You have help when you need it. You're part of something bigger than yourself. That's what modern humans had that Neanderthals didn't. And it's what you need too. Don't be like Vorak's isolated band. Be like the network of modern human groups helping each other survive. One phone call, one visit, one connection. Start there. Lesson 2. Don't specialize yourself into irrelevance. Here's what I mean. You spent 40 years as an engineer, or a teacher, or a factory worker, or a soldier. That was your identity. That's who you were. But now you're retired, and if engineer or teacher or soldier is the only identity you have, you're in trouble. Because when that role ends, what's left? Who are you when you're not doing the thing that defined you? Neanderthals were hunters. That was their identity, their culture, their purpose. When the herds disappeared and hunting became impossible, they had nothing to fall back on. They were too specialized. Don't make that mistake. You are more than your career. You're also a father, a grandfather, a friend, a neighbor, a veteran, a reader, a gardener, a storyteller, a craftsman, a learner. You're a person with experiences and wisdom and skills that have nothing to do with what you used to do for money. Cultivate those identities. Plant a garden even if you've never gardened before. Read books about subjects you know nothing about. Learn a new skill. Take a class at the community college. Volunteer. Teach someone something. Help your neighbor fix his fence. Mentor a young person who's struggling. Be multiple things, because when one thing fails, and things always fail eventually, you have others to fall back on. That's what generalists do. That's how they survive when specialists don't. I'll tell you something personal. When I retired, I was terrified. I'd been Professor Thornwood for 40 years. That's who I was. That's what gave my life meaning. And suddenly I wasn't that anymore. I was just Eli, an old man in the desert with too much time. It took me 2 years to figure out I could be other things. I started volunteering at the local high school, helping kids with science projects. Nothing formal, just showing up. I learned to cook, properly cook. Not just survive, but actually make good food. I started writing, not academic papers, stories, memories, things I wanted my grandkids to know. Each thing gave me a new identity, a new purpose. And now when people ask what I do, I have answers. I'm a volunteer, a cook, a writer, a grandfather, a neighbor, a student of life, not just a retired professor. That diversity saved me from becoming irrelevant, from becoming extinct in my own way. You can do the same thing. Don't let yourself be defined by one thing. Be many things, have many roots. Because when the world changes, and it will, you'll have something to hold on to. Like the modern humans who could hunt, fish, gather, and trade. When one food source failed, they had others. Be like that. Lesson 3. Climate change is real and it demands adaptation. I'm not just talking about weather. I'm talking about the climate of your life, the landscape of the world you live in, social climate, political climate, technological climate, cultural climate. The world of 2024 is not the world of 1965 or 1975 or even 2000. You know this. You've lived it. Values have shifted. What was acceptable when you were young isn't acceptable now. What was scandalous then is normal now. Technology has invaded everything. You can't get a doctor's appointment without using a computer. Can't talk to your bank without navigating phone trees and apps. Politics has become toxic, divided, angry in ways it wasn't before. The climate has changed. You can rail against it. You can say it's wrong, it's worse, it was better in the old days. And you might even be right about some of that. But it doesn't matter, because the climate has changed regardless of whether you approve. And you have two choices: adapt or retreat into isolation and irrelevance. The Neanderthals faced their own climate crisis. Literal climate change, temperature drops of 10 degrees in a few decades. Some of them adapted, moved to new areas, learned new techniques from modern humans, survived a little longer. Others stayed where they were, did what they'd always done, and died. You're facing the same choice, not about whether to survive physical cold, but about whether to survive in a world that's different from the one you knew. I'm not saying you have to love it. I'm not saying you have to agree with everything, but you have to engage with it. You have to learn enough about technology to function, to stay connected, to access services. You have to understand enough about the modern world to communicate with your kids and grandkids, to relate to them, to remain part of their lives. You have to accept that some things have changed for good and aren't coming back. That's adaptation. That's survival. Here's my example. I hate smartphones. I really do. They're annoying, complicated, fragile. They invade your privacy and demand constant attention. But I learned to use one anyway, because my daughter lives in California, and she sends pictures of my grandkids through some app. And if I want to see those pictures, if I want to be part of their lives, I need to know how to use the damn phone. So I learned. It took me 6 months. My neighbor's grandson helped, showed me patiently over and over how to do basic things. And now I can text my daughter, see photos, even do video calls. I still hate the phone, but I love being connected to my family more than I hate the technology. That's adaptation. That's choosing connection over comfort. That's choosing relevance over isolation. You can do the same. Whatever the change is that you're resisting, technology, social norms, whatever, ask yourself, is my resistance keeping me connected? Or is it isolating me? If it's isolating you, maybe it's time to adapt. Not because change is always good, but because isolation is always deadly. Remember what happened to Vorek's band. 17 people, isolated, struggling. Compare that to the modern human network. Connected, helping each other, surviving. Which do you want to be? Lesson 4: language is connection. Share your stories. This one's important. You have stories, decades of them. You remember the Cold War, duck and cover drills, the fear of nuclear annihilation that was just part of daily life. You remember the civil rights movement, the moon landing, the assassinations, Watergate. You remember gas lines and stagflation, the fall of the Berlin Wall, 9/11. You remember when neighborhoods were different, when people knew their neighbors, when kids played outside without supervision. You remember when a handshake meant something, when people kept their word, when communities took care of their own. These aren't just memories. They're knowledge. They're wisdom. They're lessons about what works and what doesn't, about how to endure, about what matters. And if you don't share them, they die with you. Just like knowledge died with isolated Neanderthals when the person who knew a skill died before teaching it. Talk to your grandkids, not just how's school surface conversations, real talks about your life, about what you learned, about mistakes you made and what they taught you. Tell them about the time you almost gave up but didn't, about the friend who saved your life, about the woman you loved before you met their grandmother. Tell them about fear and courage, about loss and resilience, about what it takes to get back up when life knocks you down. They need to hear this, not because they'll listen perfectly. They won't. They're kids. They're distracted. But some of it will sink in. And years from now, when they face their own crisis, they'll remember something you said. And it will help them. That's how knowledge survives. Not through genes, through stories, through language connecting one generation to the next. I'll tell you what I wish I'd done. My father died in 2012. He was 87, served in the Pacific in World War II, saw things he never talked about. I tried to get him to tell me, to record his memories, to write them down. He wouldn't. That's the past, he'd say. No point dwelling on it. And now he's gone. And all those stories are gone with him. What was it like on Okinawa? What did he see? How did he cope? What did he learn? I'll never know. My grandkids will never know. That knowledge is extinct. Don't let that happen to your stories. Write them down, record them, tell them to anyone who will listen. Put them in letters, in emails, in videos, leave something behind. Because language, stories, that's how we become immortal. Not through our bodies, through the wisdom we pass on. Dvorak couldn't fully explain to his band why the world was changing or what they needed to do. His language wasn't built for that kind of complex explanation. You have that capability. Use it. Share your stories. Teach your lessons. Connect the generations. That's how culture survives. Lesson 5, transform, don't die. This is the big one, the one that ties everything together. You're not the person you were at 30. Your body's different, slower, weaker, more fragile. Your mind's different too. Slower in some ways, but deeper in others. More patient, more wise. Your role is different. You're not the provider anymore. Not the one everyone depends on. Your kids are grown. Your career is over. You've lost people. Friends, siblings, maybe a spouse. You've lost capabilities. Can't do the physical things you used to do. Can't work the long hours. Can't keep up with the young people. And there's a temptation to see all that as death, to see yourself as diminished, reduced, less than you were. But that's the wrong way to look at it. You haven't died, you've transformed. The strength of your body has become the strength of your experience. The speed of your youth has become the patience of your age. The ambition that drove you has become the wisdom that guides others. You're not less, you're different, like water becoming ice, or ice becoming water. The substance is the same, the form has changed. That's transformation, and that's what you need to embrace. The Neanderthals had a choice near the end. Some of them, the ones who merged with modern human groups, who had hybrid children who let go of pure identity, their genes survived. Others, the ones who held on to purity, who refused to adapt, who stayed separate, died out completely. Both choices are understandable, but only one led to survival. You're facing a similar choice. Not about genes, about identity. About who you are and who you're willing to become. You can hold on to the person you were, the young man, the worker, the soldier, the strong one, and watch yourself become irrelevant as that person fades. Or you can transform. Become the elder, the storyteller, the wise one, the patient one, the one who's seen it all and lived to tell about it. Become the person who listens instead of lectures, who asks questions instead of giving orders, who connects instead of commands. That transformation is hard. I won't pretend it's easy. It means letting go of things that defined you, accepting limitations you never had before, finding new sources of meaning and purpose. But it's also beautiful because the person you become, the transformed version, has gifts the young version never had. Perspective, patience, wisdom, the long view, the ability to see what matters and what doesn't. The freedom that comes from knowing you've lived a life, made mistakes, survived them, learned something. That's not death, that's evolution. And evolution is how species survive. Not by staying the same, by changing, by adapting, by becoming what they need to be for the new world they're in. Let me bring this full circle, back to where we started. I'm standing in a cave in Chaco Canyon, holding a Neanderthal skull. This man died 39,000 years ago. His species is extinct, but he's not gone. Not really. He lives in me, in you, in 8 billion people carrying fragments of Neanderthal DNA. His strength is in our bones. His endurance is in our cells. His stubbornness helped us survive. He didn't fail. He succeeded in a way he never expected. By becoming part of something bigger, by transforming instead of disappearing. And that's the final lesson. You will transform. Your body will fail eventually. We all know this. But you, the essential you, the wisdom and love and experience that makes you who you are, that doesn't have to die. It lives on in your children and grandchildren, in the lessons you taught them, in the stories you told, in the example you set, in the kid you mentored who remembers your advice when he faces his own crisis, in the friend you helped who pays it forward to someone else, in the small acts of kindness and courage that ripple out long after you are gone. That's immortality, not living forever, living beyond yourself. The Neanderthals didn't know they would live on in us. They couldn't have imagined it, but some of them made a choice to mix, to merge, to become part of something new. And because of that choice, they're still here, transformed, different, but alive. You have that same choice. You can retreat, hold on to the past, refuse to adapt, isolate yourself, and fade into irrelevance. Or you can connect, adapt, transform, share, teach, love, and live on in ways you can't even imagine. Let me tell you about Vorak's final choice. He's 44 now, old for a Neanderthal. His body aches, his teeth are worn, he moves slower than he used to. His band is down to 12 people, not enough to survive long term. He knows this. Tala lives with the modern humans now. Her hybrid son is 2 years old, healthy, strong, learning to talk in both languages. The modern humans have offered again to let Vorak's band join them, live together. One group, Vorak gathers his people, the 12 who remain. He speaks. The old way is dying, he says. I've tried to keep it alive, to maintain tradition, to be who we've always been. But the world has changed. The herds are gone. The cold is too harsh. We are too few. If we stay separate, we die, all of us, within a few years. If we join them, we change. We won't be pure anymore. Our children will be different, mixed, but they'll live. He looks at each person, sees fear, confusion, some anger. I can't choose for you, he says. Each person must decide. 6 people choose to join the modern human band, mostly younger ones, people willing to adapt, to learn new languages, new ways, new identities. 6 people choose to stay separate, mostly older ones, people who would rather die as themselves than live as someone else. Vorak understands both choices. He makes his own. He stays with the 6 who choose separation, not because he thinks it's the right choice, not because he thinks they'll survive, but because he's old, too old to learn a new language, too old to become someone new. He's lived his life as a Neanderthal. He'll die as one. There's honor in that. The 6 who leave, they survive. Their genes mix with modern humans. Their children thrive. Their descendants number in the billions. The 6 who stay, they die within 3 years. A harsh winter, starvation, the last of their line. Both groups made the choice that was right for them. But only one choice led to genetic immortality. You're at a similar crossroads, not about species, about yourself, about who you're willing to become, about whether you'll adapt to the changing world or retreat from it, about whether you'll share your wisdom or let it die with you, about whether you'll connect or isolate, about whether you'll transform or fade. I can't make that choice for you, nobody can. But I can tell you this, the Neanderthals who chose adaptation, who let their children marry into modern human bands, who learned new languages, who accepted that their grandchildren would be different. Those Neanderthals live on. In you, in me, in 8 billion people. The Neanderthals who chose purity, who held on to tradition at all costs, who refused to change, they're truly gone. Both choices had dignity, but only one had a future. 40,000 years ago, there was a Neanderthal man. We called him Vorak. He lived in Gibraltar. 44 years old for his people. He had a daughter, Tala, 19 years old, smart, curious, brave. Vorak watched his world die. The climate was changing. The herds were migrating. His people were starving, and strangers were arriving. Taller, different, Speaking languages he couldn't quite understand. He had a choice: fight them, hold on to tradition, keep his people pure and separate, or let his daughter go with them, let her marry into these strange new people, let his grandchildren be something different, something mixed, something new. The first choice meant preserving who they were. The second meant surviving. He chose survival. He let Tala go, and she lived, and her children lived, and their children's children lived, and eventually one of those descendants was your ancestor, and mine. Vorik made the hard choice, the choice to transform instead of die, the choice to adapt instead of hold on, the choice that let his people survive even if they didn't survive in the form he knew. Now you face your own version of that choice, not about species, about yourself, about who you're willing to become, about whether you'll adapt to the changing world or retreat from it, about whether you'll share your wisdom or let it die with you, about whether you'll connect or isolate, about whether you'll transform or fade. I can't make that choice for you. Nobody can, but I can tell you this. The Neanderthals survived for 400,000 years doing things one way. That's impressive. That's success by any measure. But we survived by doing things differently, by being flexible instead of rigid, by connecting instead of isolating, by adapting instead of holding on, by transforming instead of dying. And we've been doing it for 300,000 years now, with the last 50,000 being the most dramatic changes in human history: cities, agriculture, writing, art, science, technology, and all of it possible because we learned to adapt, because we learned to transform, because we learned to become what we needed to be. You've been doing this your whole life. You adapted when you left home and started your career, or got married. You adapted when you became a parent, when you changed around, when you moved to a new city. You adapted when computers came along, when the world went digital, when everything you knew changed. You've been adapting all along. This is just one more transformation. From the person you were to the person you're becoming. From the worker to the elder. From the strong to the wise. From the one who does to the one who guides. It's not easy, but you've done harder things. And you can do this too. Because you're not just you. You're the culmination of 400,000 years of humans surviving impossible odds. You carry Neanderthal strength in your bones. You carry Homo sapiens adaptability in your mind. You carry the wisdom of every ancestor who ever faced change and found a way through it. That's who you are. That's what you carry. Use it. Connect with people. Learn new things. Share your stories. Adapt to the changing world. Transform. Become who you need to be for this moment. Not for me, not for your kids, for you. Because you have more to give, more to learn, more to experience, more to borrow to become. The story isn't over, not yet. It's late now or early, depending on when you started this. You've been listening for 90 minutes. Thank you for that. Thank you for staying with me, for following this story from ancient caves to modern lessons, for being willing to think about hard things, for being open to transformation. If you're still awake, I hope you learned something. If you're drifting off, I hope you dream of Vorak and Tala, of ice and fire, of ancient choices that echo through time. I hope you dream of connections stretching across 40,000 years. I hope you wake up tomorrow with a sense of possibility, with the understanding that you're part of something vast and ancient and ongoing, that you carry 400,000 years of survival in your cells. That transformation is not death. That adaptation is not surrender. That connection is not weakness. You are the descendant of survivors, people who crossed frozen oceans and burning deserts, people who faced climate change and competition and extinction and found a way through, people who adapted, connected, transformed, and survived. That's in you, right now. Always has been, always will be. Use it. Good night, sleep well. And remember, you carry 400,000 years of strength in your bones. Use it wisely.